at Against the Stream, for many years now, we've just really felt like we're trying to build Sangha, whether it's online or in person, this idea of community, this idea that, even though we are in charge of our own salvation, we don't have to do it alone. And that's, to me, that's a good thing. And that we actually do need each other. The term is Kalyanamitta. Kalyanamitta in Pali, in the Buddhist language, means spiritual friend, and that we need spiritual friends, people that are like-minded, people that are struggling and looking to not struggle as much, perhaps, and we even need to bump up against each other a little bit. We need to have differing opinions and perhaps conflicts. And I used to think that living in a monastery was all, everyone was super zenned out, right? Everyone's super mellow. But no, monks throw down, They're like, no, you're wrong. They'll argue. They'll get heated. They get upset. They get sleepy. They eat too much. They're subject to all the things that we're subject to. Monks, nuns, especially just living in conflict for, or living in close proximity with each other. And then when there's conflict, then there's not really anywhere to go. So it's a little bit of a pressure cooker. So in the same way, we need spiritual friends, both to support us and to challenge us. All right, so I guess I kind of already started. We're going to sit for a time. My name's Jason Murphy, by the way. This is Wednesday Against the Stream. I'm going to sit for a time, and then I'm going to expand. I decided instead of, last week I was going through, I kind of skimmed over the 5 faculties of these are the 5 faculties. These are the 5 faculties, and we really need these to help support us in our meditation practice. And then I went into the hindrances, and I talked about the hindrances, which, if you weren't here last week, either online or in the room, it'll be posted on YouTube as all the talks are. So you can check it out there. But then I decided, instead of just trying to skim through the faculties, I'm actually going to take each week and break one down. And we'll just kind of unpack it, because it's actually pretty damn helpful to do. The hindrances, we all already know them. They're the things that plague our minds every time we sit in meditation or go to bed or are riding a bike or get mad at ourselves or driving, or, they're all of the things that we are struggling with. And the faculties are the tools that we can use, that the Buddha gave, that Buddhism offers, that are innate, that we can cultivate. So we'll get to that in a little bit. But let's go ahead and practice for a bit. So finding a posture that's workable, that's sustainable. And, if you want to, there's cushions. You can grab a cushion. You can sit on the floor. You don't have to sit in a chair. And we'll probably start to just put a couple out as more people are coming to the center. So if you want to sit on a cushion, you can. That's what they're there for. Of course, it doesn't make you more spiritual to sit cross-legged, cushion or no cushion, but some people prefer it. I enjoy it. I like it. I feel like it helps me. But some people, it's not their thing, and that's okay too. Yeah. So if you wouldn't mind just allowing the eyes to close. If you don't feel comfortable with your eyes closed, you can just allow them to be downcast, just kind of looking down to the floor a little bit in front of you and settling in. And actually just taking a few of those kind of bigger breaths, like a few really intentional breaths, maybe feeling the lungs or the belly. Sometimes I use the 4-count inhale, and a 6-count exhale. And perhaps just inviting the mind to arrive here, this breath, this body. So there's sounds and there's thoughts and there's sensations in the body, none of which are a problem, all of which are an opportunity to stay connected to what's happening in the present time experience. We don't need to go chasing sounds or thoughts or sensations. We can just allow them to be kind of in the background of our attention. Sometimes it's useful to give the mind a job. And so using some simple phrase like here, now, not as a command, but as an invitation for the attention to be here, stay here. Perhaps connecting the words to the breath. Seeing how sounds arise and pass away. Thoughts arise and pass away. All things arise, stay for a time, and pass away. Of course, whenever we recognize that the attention wanders off, it's not a problem. Future, past, history, or mystery. Just acknowledging where the attention has gone, and then with that sense of friendliness or kindness with the mind, aiming the attention back. again and again, just recognizing when the attention wanders off, and with that sense of friendliness or kindness with the mind, aiming the attention back. Here, now, this sitting, breathing body relaxing into each new breath, observing what arises in the heart, in the mind, and allowing whatever arises to stay for a time and pass away, as all things do. whenever we recognize the attention has wandered off. Noting where it's gone, future or past, perhaps fantasy or craving, aversion, rehashing some old story, rehearsing some future outcome. And then let it go. It's just the tendency of the mind, just its habit, aiming the attention back, relaxing into the breath, noticing if there's anything happening here in this body. Can we soften? Can we relax? Can we begin to see that we're not our thoughts? They arise, they stay for a time, they pass away. We're not our feelings. Same process. Just seeing the arising and passing away, just as each breath and sound and sensation in the body. No different, just a process, like weather. stays for a time, passes away, changes. Perhaps opening to any patterns, any moods in the mind, places that the attention is drawn to, future, past, rehashing, rehearsing, craving, fantasy, sleepiness, agitation, doubt, aversion, or ill will. We don't need to go poking around, just be open to what is the mood of the mind. How is it changing? And then aiming the attention back, breath, body, here, now. Relaxed and alert. It's just like this. Right now. It's just like this. Moving the body any way you feel like you need to or want to. Does it feel stuffy in here? You want to maybe pop open that back window? And if you wouldn't mind, you can just pull that window open again a little bit more. It'd be great. Just to get a little breeze. I don't think we need the AC. Thank you.
You commented once about body position during meditation, about lowering your chin, that you people tend to. That was really helpful for me when you mentioned it. It was like ages ago. And I'm much more mindful about that, and I realized that I do start to hold like up, and then I have to be mindful to lower it and take the pressure off my neck.
Yeah.
Yeah, super helpful.
Yeah,
So I just
thanks.
thought I'd thank you because I don't think I ever.
And you
mentioned that.
noticed it. You noticed it, and you've been more aware of it. Body
Much
posture.
more aware now, and I notice even during meditation, very incrementally it's moving.
Yeah.
I'm not really aware of moving,
Yeah.
but then I notice it.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not mindful during it, I notice it later that my neck hurts. Especially like, if you're sitting for an hour or more.
Right. No, right. I orient my chin in the beginning of meditation. It's just one of the things that I noticed. I think when I first started in Zen meditation, I must have just been like this all the time.
Up. It just keeps creeping up.
And then I was also leaning forward a lot. And I had this Zen teacher who was just really hardcore, and he was like, don't do that, do this, do that. And it was helpful. And I was kind of, I was young at the time, and I needed that kind of discipline, so it was useful. Another thing that since we're talking about body posture, another thing that I kind of noticed, or that I've, brought my attention to, is my sternum. That I notice, or try to be aware of when I start to slump. Then also my chin will start to drop. So there's this and so I try to just be aware, not of like this, like being rigid, but just like my rib cage. Like I just try to kind of be aware of where is the position of my rib cage, and then does that mean I'm leaning forward, and then just making subtle adjustments. It also helps with sleepiness, like if you're sleepy, and making that subtle adjustment. So yeah. Whatever works, whatever is helpful. These are just suggestions around body posture, allowing the head to be raised up towards the ceiling, which then takes like a little bit of pressure off the low back. And, there's just all these kind of little ways. If you sit for any period of time, they'll all scream at you. Yeah. The hips and the knees and the neck and the shoulder, and, so you get to play with it.
Parts of your body start to itch that never itch anymore.
Right, exactly. Yeah. The phantom itch.
I found one thing. I'll share about itching. Things itching. Like usually, the minute I start sitting, like my eyebrow itches or something, and I one day said to myself, the itch will go away whether you scratch it or not. Just like you can watch your emotions come and go, and they're both the same thing. And that has helped me. That when I'm like. It would feel so good to scratch them. No, it'll go away. It's just like watch your emotions. Don't go down the rabbit hole with those either.
It's a great awareness. It's a good example, and actually a good lead-in to the talk. Because tonight I'm going to talk about the 5 faculties, and one of them is what's called vigor, or virya. Sometimes it's translated as energy or effort. And I'll just kind of run through them. These are known as the 5 faculties that then transform over time into the 5 powers. So we can cultivate them, we can strengthen them, we can become better at them. And they are faith, vigor, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. And so I'll break them down. Actually, each week I'll break each one of them down. And then maybe tie them all together, and how they work with the hindrances at the end. But just to say, since you brought this up, so that the whole scratching, the whole kind of itch or twitch or move or get up and leave, or it's a practice in discipline. It's a practice in self-discipline. And can I? And what's called strong determination. Can I sit with strong determination? And this was actually what my first teachers, who were Soto Zen, but they weren't Rinzai Zen. In other words, they weren't hitting us with sticks, but they were very clear about posture and not moving. And they weren't kind and gentle. They were like, no, this is what you do. You sit, and you don't move, and you watch the spot on the wall, and you breathe, and that's it. And that was all the instruction I ever got for a few years, actually. But the strong determination that comes from that kind of a practice, where you feel the itch on the nose, and then you don't scratch it, It's really just about not feeding craving. The craving to satisfy, arises, and then it seems like you're gonna die if you don't scratch that itch. But it's a great example of it's actually not that big of a deal, and it will pass. And then you see it pass, and then what do you gain? Some confidence in your ability to not scratch every fucking itch that you have, right? Otherwise, you're right? You're scratching and itching and moving and seeking comfort, because the reality is that we're addicted to comfort. I don't know about you. I mean, maybe you're different, but I am addicted to comfort, and I have been. And so, I mentioned earlier, like, it doesn't make you more spiritual to sit on the ground, but try sitting on the ground, and you might have more discomfort, which will be more to work with, right? I had a Zen teacher. I don't know why I'm bringing up Zen teachers, but I had a Zen teacher early on who said, just sitting on a cushion, you can learn more about yourself and your mind than studying the Dharma. Just sitting on the cushion and watching and being present with. Not spacing out, not falling asleep. I mean, these things might happen. But, just like this practice, when we come back and we're kind and we're gentle to ourselves, and we're aware of our posture and we're aware of, are we slumping, not in a harsh way, but in a curiosity way.
About the itch too, the thing I find interesting is you can obsess about, like, oh God, but it would feel so good to scratch it. Don't scratch it, don't scratch it. And then 5 minutes later, you realize you never noticed when it stopped itching.
Right.
That it's been a while.
Yeah.
And it stopped. And so you didn't notice the moment it stopped.
Right.
They just go.
Yeah, Thich Nhat Hanh has a teaching called the untoothache. Most of our lives, we go around with no toothache. But then when we have a toothache, we're acutely aware. And so he's pointing to give attention to the untoothache, all of the moments that we're not actually suffering, that we're not in pain, that we're not having a negative thought. Incline the mind towards those moments. And that's ultimately what I think Buddhism is trying to teach. So I want to kind of unpack this a little bit, and then I'll open up for some questions or some comments. So the first of the 5 faculties is faith. Now, the word faith is loaded, particularly in our culture. And, yet from a Buddhist perspective and as a translation, it just means what it's inspiring, and I'll kind of break that down. Yet and this is what's useful in understanding what I like to call a perceptual database. We all have a perceptual database, every single one of us. From the moment we're born to this moment, we have perceived things, we've been taught things. How did you learn how to tie a shoe? Somebody taught you, and then you knew how to tie a shoe, and then you see how somebody else ties a shoe, and you're like, hey, that's different than the way that I tie my shoe. And then you're recalling perceptual database. Knowing what this is, knowing what you're sitting on, everything is perception. And we either taught it or we acquired it. And then it stores in our minds, in our memories. Right? And so there's this other aspect of Buddhism, right, called a beginner's mind, where, can we see a thing or experience a moment without perceptual database, without the overlaying of all of the things that we've experienced, right? I'll give you a simple example. I've been bit by several dogs in my life and a few monkeys. And I like dogs. I think I get along with most dogs, but like I was a paper boy, I got bit by a dog. When I was a kid, I got bit by a dog. So I have there's like an aversion that I had to work with for a long time around any kind of dog, particularly little yappy dogs. right? And I would be like, acutely aware that I could get bit by this dog, whether it was going to hurt or not hurt. That wasn't the point. The point was that was my perceptual database. I would see a dog and I would be like, danger, I could get bit by this dog. It was all happening in the background. So I would just kind of have aversion naturally to dogs because of this perceptual database. Right? So that's an example of how we can see a person that reminds us of someone from our past, teachers, cops, moms, dads, uncles, people with goatees, whatever, right? The list goes on. That can be influenced by our perceptual database. And what we're trying to learn to do with beginner's mind and with meditation is see a thing for what it is and not for what we perceive it to be. And this is how we get entangled, right? So faith, from a Buddhist perspective, really, we translate it here very often as inspiration or confidence because they're more palatable. Talked last week, what inspired you to come to practice? Was it a book? Was it something you found online? Did you go to a mindfulness class? Did someone that started meditating and start being less of an asshole? Like, what was the inspiration, right? And then what inspired you to try meditation? Maybe it was for me, it was I was court ordered to see a psychologist who happened to be a meditation teacher also, and was like, hey, this is kind of useful, you might try it. And it was useful, but then I didn't do it until I was locked up looking at bricks on the ceiling on my bunk, stressing out, and then I started to do the practice. And it helped. It was supportive to me. And that was another moment of like, oh, okay, this can be useful. So that was an inspiration and then confidence. So faith from the Buddhist perspective is, a belief and like that must go beyond available evidence. Any faith, anything that we have faith in, it's going beyond what's knowable, beyond evidence. And the believer, right, must be willing to read or to fill the gaps of the evidence with an attitude of patience and trusting acceptance. Now, for me, that's a little bit hard to do. I'm kind of a skeptic. I tend to not just take things on blind faith, which is where I feel like with some of my perceptual database around religion and religiosity, just believe this because it said it in this book, because the preacher at the front of the room said so, because his translation must be true. What I love about Buddhism is basically there's a famous teaching around faith and skepticism. It's called the Kalama Sutta. And I'll just give you the short version. The short version is that the Buddha, before he was famous, right? He was just kind of newly teaching, traveling around. And at the time, there was all kinds of sages and gurus and all kinds of people that were claiming that they had the answer, right, to freedom from suffering. This is the bliss supreme. Follow this yogic path, right? Do the, whatever that one of those gurus, right? Or do the Ashtanga practice only and you will reach enlightenment. Do the Vedana practice only and you will, reach, nirvana, right? So this was happening like kind of every week. The Kalama people had a village that was along the Ganges, and it was kind of like it was a well-traveled, it was like part of the tour, And so the Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, with a few monks, was hanging out outside the village, and then they would do what they do, which is go for alms rounds. And then some of the villagers came after they offered food, and he ate the food that there was offered, and started asking him questions. And one of the questions that they asked him is, "Why should we believe you? Last week, this other guy was here saying, standing on one foot, patting your head, and chanting Om Mani Padme Hum was the way to enlightenment. So how is it that what you're saying is going to be different?" And basically the Buddha said, "Don't take my word for it. See for yourself." The words in Pali, adipasiko. Adipasiko means come see for yourself. And he basically said, don't believe anything because it's written down in a book, because it's old, because people with long beards or tattoos say it's true. Don't believe anything that you haven't seen the direct result of the evidence of its benefit in reducing your own suffering. Don't take it on faith. Take it on evidence. Verifiable evidence. So, of course, the column of people were like, "Oh, wow, this is the first person that just gave it to us straight." And then, then he laid out the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, and he said, you can only eat once a day, and no, I'm just joking. He actually didn't say any of that. But what he did say is, see for yourself. If this practice is useful and beneficial for you, keep doing it. If it's not, find something that is. I only teach one thing, suffering and its end. I don't get into metaphysics. I'm not going to talk to you about God. I'm not going to talk to you about the Vedanas and the asanas, and that's not my bag. I teach the truth of suffering and the end of the truth of suffering. The end of suffering. The eradication of suffering. So that being said, faith has two opposites. A dull awareness of things which are worthy of believing in. So this is kind of like that skepticism where sometimes I call it, like contempt prior to investigation, right? Where it's like, I don't know, that seems kind of fishy. It's kind of the way I was about meditation. Because when I first learned about meditation, it was like, did you guys ever see that Wild Wild West documentary, right, with the Rajneesh guy? He later became Osho. He rebranded himself to be Osho. But anyway, in the 70s, in the mountains that I grew up in, there was these Rajneeshis moved in. They all wore red. They wore beaded mala beads and had a little picture of a guru. They all looked and acted the same. And I was like, those people are weird, and they're meditating, and that's some kind of cult. And clearly it was, actually. And I'm, that's not, if that's what meditation is, not having it, Then later, like I was telling you, I, was introduced to meditation in a different context, and I found that it worked for me. So then it became verifiable that this is beneficial. But so the dull awareness of that some things are worth believing in. But there are some things that are worthy. That's where faith is going to hopefully inspire us in that way. So the other aspect of the opposite of faith is doubt or perplexity, where we start questioning. And what I love about Buddhism is Buddhism says, be skeptic, be skeptical. It's okay. Have a little bit of doubt, but don't be overrun by doubt that you don't ever do anything, right? Because what does doubt do? What is it to be perplexed? Stuck, right? To not be able to make a decision, to not see clearly. So blind faith versus verified faith is the way I like to have a distinction here within Buddhism. So what is it that Buddhism asks us to have faith in? Not a whole lot, but a few things. Most is verifiable. These things may be verifiable over time. Now, what I want to kind of say is, so Buddhism, one of the ways it's described is the gradual path, the gradual awakening. And one of the ways that the Buddha described it is as the ocean from the shore slowly inclines, or declines, I guess, to the depths. So does our awareness and our understanding of the Dharma. So, first we're just lapping the shore with a couple inches, and it's, it's warm, we can feel, and then we start to get, and then pretty soon we're above our head, we have to kind of be treading water, but then eventually, we'll be understanding and able to explore the depths. But it will take time. So some of the things that our faith is required, one is karma, the belief in karma, and rebirth. Now, I don't really know. 25 years I've been doing this. I don't really know about karma. I believe in karma. I have faith that karma is just like gravity. It exists. I don't need to know about it. I don't need to understand. I understand how fucking gravity works, but I know that it works, right? Same thing with rebirth. Like, I don't fully understand rebirth. It's translated in lots of different weird ways, depending on the style of Buddhism. Sometimes it's, reincarnation, and sometimes it's rebirth, and sometimes it's, past life regression. Like, I don't know. But in Buddhism, it says karma and rebirth are connected. Hopefully someday I figure it out. But for now, I'd have to just take it on faith. So the acceptance of the basic teachings about the nature of reality, such as kind of the conditioned co-production, or what's called co-arising, that conditionality is some of the ways it's talked about. Emptiness or not self. These are things that we can't readily know. And people always want to know. I want to know why. Like, why is this the teaching? Why does it happen? I don't know. But what I do know is that in my own practice, I have begun to kind of see more and understand more, reading, practicing, living, as maybe you too. Right? But it's not about blind faith. It's actually about investigation. See for yourself what's true. So another thing that's talked about objects of faith, confidence in the three refuges, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. In the beginning, to me, this is a verifiable faith that comes on pretty quickly. Right? So confidence in the Buddha, inspiration from the teachings of the Buddha, the historical Buddha, the Buddha's teaching, the practicality of it, the Dharma, the truth of the teaching, the Dharma, truth in nature, my favorite translation. And then the third is Sangha, community. Having faith in a community of practitioners. Sometimes a little harder to do because we're fallible, because we'll break trust, because we'll leave. But ultimately, in the group of practitioners, the group of people who are inspired, and the generations that have helped propel Buddhism to now. This is what's talked about. So the last piece is belief in the efficacy of the prescribed practices. And that nibbana, freedom from suffering, is the final way out of our difficulties. Just side note, the word nibbana, which is the Pali word for nirvana, right? That it basically means the extinguishing of the flame. And it was actually just an everyday household word. that the Buddha would say, Nibbana, freedom from suffering, is the extinguishing of the flame. The flame of what? Craving. Yeah. The extinguishing of the flame of craving is what allows us to feel the freedom from suffering. Craving equals suffering. Craving equals attachment equals suffering. I know this is kind of like a little bit basic, but it's useful. But what does that actually mean? So I kind of talked about it last week. Eradicating the hindrances. That's what we're trying to do here. And I was guiding a little bit to like in the mind. I was guiding a little bit during the meditation, noticing the moons of the mind, noticing the tendencies of the mind. Do we see craving, fantasy? Do we see aversion, ill will? Are we just running through all the people that we're pissed at in our minds? Right. Are we is there sluggishness or agitation? Is there doubt? And just to acknowledge it, just, oh yeah, doubt's in the mind. That's a little bit that piece of right now it's like this, which, we co-opted from the lineage holder, Ajahn Sumedho. Sumedho is the kind of elder in our Thai forest tradition. And actually, I think that Noah's going to be doing a class on some of the essential teachings of Ajahn Sumedho. Trippy dude. He's like 6'6", looks like Herman Munster kind of. I'm actually saying this out loud on YouTube, but he's huge. He's a huge American guy, very imposing, does not look like a monk at all, who will, in his insight and his wit and his clarity, amazing. But when I met him, I was like, wow, this guy does not look like a monk. Like what my perceptual database of what a monk is, So anyway, he gave us that teaching. Right now it's like this, which is present time awareness. All right, so just a couple more things about faith. Faith implies a resolute or courageous act of will. So in order to just begin this practice, and this is why often we say something like, well, for me, I had to be in so much pain to stoop so low as to actually try meditation. Like I had to be in enough pain to go like, okay, maybe those Rajneesh hippies were right, and I should try that shit. And I did, and I was resistant and a little bit angry about it because it was helpful. But I kept going. Like I kept doing it. And so it combines the steadfast resolution that one will do the thing with self-confidence. So we'll continue the practice with self-confidence, and then that confidence will increase. Right? So this is why faith and inspiration build to confidence, which help to continue to propel us to develop the other faculties. So there's some opposites. So that's volitional. So there's certain ways to break down faith from a Buddhist perspective. This volitional action, right, which is that faith implies resolution, courageous act of will. So that's kind of what volitional means, like taking action, intentional, courageous action. And then there's an emotional aspect of faith as well. That faith is like an attitude of serenity and lucidity. So if we allow ourselves to develop faith in the practice, then there's an attitude of serenity and lucidity, seeing clearly and being calm that can come from having faith. Which I think is probably why some people are so quick to have blind faith. They just want to believe. Just let me believe something so I can relieve the anxiety that I'm riddled with about what the fuck's going on this planet or whatever, because some religions will just, give you answers to calm your mind so that you don't have to worry. The opposite of this emotional type of faith is worry, right? The state of being troubled by many things. It's said that, someone who has faith loses what's called the 5 terrors. That he ceases or she ceases to worry about the necessities of life. In other words, they just kind of have faith that things are going to work out. You ever meet people like that? They're like, it's going to work out. Yeah, I know. There's like solid red on my Google Maps, but it's going to work out. I'm going to get there on time. Mm-hmm. And maybe they do, maybe they don't. I don't know. I'm not one of those people. About loss of reputation, they're not worried about loss of reputation, death, an unhappy rebirth, and the impression that he or she makes on an audience. This is what it says around, what it means to develop emotional qualities of faith. And then I'll end with this for tonight, and we'll open up for some questions or comments. So this is a quote by Buddhaghosa. Buddhaghosa. Buddhaghosa is the author of what's called the Visuddhimagga. The Visuddhimagga is maybe 300, 400 years after the Buddha died. Buddhaghosa took all of the teachings that had been and then started to refine them in a very user-friendly way. He basically made it more efficient so that it could be translated and understood in a more efficient fashion. And that group of teachings is called the Visuddhimagga. So anyway, he's talking about faith as the opposite of greed. And so I'll just read what he has to say. As on the unwholesome plane, greed clings and takes no offense. So faith on the wholesome plane, as greed searches for objects of sense desire, so faith for the qualities of morality. As greed does not let go of that which is harmful, so faith does not let go of that which is beneficial. So the idea of kind of building and growing, faith, confidence, inspiration is going to help to shake loose the hindrance of craving or greed. And so, this translation, unwholesome, wholesome, I like to translate it as skillful, unskillful. There are skillful actions, there are skillful mind states, there are skillful behaviors, and there are unskillful. One leading to, perhaps you could call them negative karmic momentum or negative mental states, afflictive mental states, others leading to positive mental states or helpful or healthy mental states, emotions. All right, so that's, my little bit on faith. And again, what we're going to do is build from faith to energy and effort, and then mindfulness, and then concentration, and then ultimately building to wisdom. So I guess I'll open up for any questions or any comments, things you might have. Let's see what's in the chat. There's nothing. Can you repeat? Oh, can you repeat her comment, please? I'm sorry, that was a long time ago. I don't remember. I didn't look at it. It was about posture, though. Questions, comments, thoughts? If you're, yeah.
So the way I'm kind of saying it is that it's kind of like gratitude versus gluttony. You want to be in a state where you appreciate like the things from the soul, not where you're searching for gimme, filling the hole, but just acknowledging that the hole is there and the hole is really a hole after that.
Yeah, I mean, I like that translation. I like that way of thinking about it. There just to translate for people at home, talking about what did you say? Something versus gluttony.
Gratitude
versus gluttony.
Or like today's prayer.
Yeah. Versus the kind of skillful, unskillful, and then the idea of it's not about having to take all these external things and try to fill this hole of whatever, emptiness, right? Because it's all, I mean, that's the other thing. Like, there is no hole. From the Buddhist perspective,
right.
There's no hole.
The perception.
Yeah. That there's only what we haven't realized yet. So the hole is the illusion that actually we're full, where we are whole, we are complete. And then that we just need to uncover, which is what I love about Buddhism too, because there's no original sin here. It's actually original goodness, and that works for me, because then it's like, oh, okay, so if we start from original goodness and then it just gets obstructed or we forget, then it's just about, to use the term recover, it's just about recovering that which once was lost or stolen. And sometimes it was stolen, So yeah, but I like that. It's definitely about, like, not about the gluttony piece, about like feeding, right? Always trying to fill, never feeling fulfilled. This is what we mean when we talk about craving. In Buddhism, there's a term called tanha, which basically loosely is translated to craving, but what it actually means is the unquenchable thirst. Craving, tanha, the unquenchable thirst, which as an alcoholic in recovery, I was like, oh yeah, that's me. Like, I could never have enough, Maybe you're like me. So thanks for that question, and hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah, very helpful.
Good.
It's making sense.
Good. Anything else in the room or on the Zoom? All right, so you guys are clear. Faith, confidence. Great. So we'll end it there. And I appreciate your time and attention, and we'll pick this topic up next week. And just to kind of mention in the chat, those of you who are on Zoom, there is a link to our donations button. And if you're in the room, there's a bowl. Also, just next to the bowl, there's a Venmo link, so you could always Venmo. We do ask a $15 suggested donation. Of course, you're not required, that we don't charge. This is run on donation, on Donna. And it helps to keep the doors open and the lights on and us fed, things like that. So there's a few things if you want to check out against the stream. There's an upcoming meditation retreat. I also have an upcoming meditation retreat. You can probably you could message me on Instagram or at my website, jasonmurphymft.com. And I could tell you more about, I'm having a 4-day silent meditation retreat in Northern California. and it's going to be mostly camping. So if you're interested, we could talk more about it. So just gathering all the goodness of our practice, taking a moment and just taking it in. You showed up. You're doing it. A gradual awakening, one breath at a time, one sit, one day. May all the goodness of our practice be dedicated to the freedom from suffering for all beings. May we all be free. Even you, even me.